All right, it's one of those deals where, at last, we are so thrilled to have with us the interim president of the University of Montana, Sheila Stearns, joining us. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's good to have you.
Delighted to be here.
I know that we've been kind of missing connections.
We have, but thanks for your persistence.
Oh, well,
I'm happy to be here.
We are thrilled that you could be. We know how terribly busy you are, and we appreciate you spending this time with us today. So thanks for doing that.
Fun.
Very appreciated. Yeah. So you just got off the State of the School speech, right?
I did.
How did that go?
I think it went well. I think you have to ask others, of course, for their reactions.
So when you finish a speech like that, do you already know if you're going to drop the confetti, or is that something you just kind of watch the crowd?
That's an interesting question. But know what I could feel? I don't know if you knew how we ended it up. It was with a charge to the group in the room. We had deliberately seated them in round tables and not in a theater style, and told them when they came that I would keep my talk to about 20, 25 minutes, and if they could possibly stay then the next, another half hour, so that only an hour commitment, that we would charge them with helping us with our, complete some of the ideas we need for our strategic plan for things we need to do, because we have a great strategic planning thing underway. Well, about 450 people came to the talk, so to speak to a room with all that energy, where they have to set up chairs, when you're speaking, it's a little daunting, a little scary, but it was also energizing. And so that was cool. And then to have about 300 people stay at those tables, and they were only allotted a half hour, with a recorder at each table with the ideas and recommendations. And I have yet to see all of them. I'm sure a few of those had some evaluations or tips for the president, and I will, people are getting those together for me. But they will, it was a good feeling, because it wasn't, and also I had to tear off down the hall to a group of prospective freshmen and their parents who were here for an orientation. So I said to the group working on our University of Montana planning and the ideas that we need from them, so I waved to them and left them in good charge and ran down to talk to parents and students prospective. So that was fun.
That must have been incredibly empowering for these people, because they're probably used to the whole idea, okay, the president's going to speak, and we'll go off and have coffee and talk about it.
I have no idea, but I suspect that's how I usually go to convocations or state of the anything speeches.
Right.
And I really asked my whole group, my cabinet, my staff, to say, I want it different. I want to engage people. I'm new, and I don't have a lot of time, and there's a lot we need to do to prepare for the rest of this year, to prepare for next year. And so I made the suggestion for roundtables and some work, and some important work, and it happened.
Well, the nature of the president's job is somewhat of a visionary, to kind of paint a way forward for the school. And of course, you were brought on as the interim president in less than a month. So, grabbing the vision and putting it together and figuring out where the bathroom is, it all had to happen at once.
I remember when I first talked with you, and you had mentioned when you got the call from the commissioner, and Commissioner Christian, no relation. Right. Anyway, from Commissioner Christian, I want to say, Mr. Christian. Anyway, but and you were like, okay.
Let me think about that.
This is something you want me to do. Now, you're no stranger to this, because you have been a college president, and you have been the commissioner of higher education. So it's not as like you're a neophyte. Okay, so you came into this with your eyes wide open.
I did, although the suddenness of it, as you mentioned, was still daunting. Again, it's twice I've used that word, but to get a call to say that the Board of Regents and the commissioner believed that it. And the president himself were talking about possibly that week, within a couple of days, maybe changing out, just changing. And if they did that, would I consider stepping in? And I said, he'd been trying to reach me, and all we could do, he said, this is not a good conversation to have on the phone, but here's what it's about, since he'd tried 3 times to meet with me. And
we've had this problem too.
Yeah, right. So anyway, yes, it was, I really needed to decide in 24 hours, because if I said no, they needed to get hard on and search for someone else. So.
Well, I'm not available, so.
Yes, well,
plus family members.
Are
aren't
you
allowed.
sure that, given the name and all, they didn't call you first, Peter? But
no,
if you turned it down,
well,
it turns out I am appreciating the opportunity.
Well, here's the deal. I think you have to have a college degree before you can be an interim president, and I don't have one. So there you go.
Oh, you have several kinds of degrees and experience. That's clear.
So I'm curious about what the tenor is of the environment you walked into. You know, your first day as president, it seemed to me in the run-up to this switch, there was a little bit of antagonism between what you might call the school administration and the school, the teachers on the other end. And there seemed to be this disconnect that money was always being spent in favor of one group versus the other. And I was just wondering if that's been ameliorated at all, or if you're working towards bringing the two sides together, or how that looks.
Mm-hmm. John, there's so much sort of perception in your question that I'm interested to even hear it expressed that way.
Yeah.
But like you, as a civilian in the community, reading the paper and hearing what I can hear on the news, I completely understand and to a degree shared that perception. Also, though, having been in higher ed administration, I knew that there was a lot more to the story, which is, I think, to the heart of your question then, what I found. Right away, the academic calendar is such that it kind of slows down during December. So I had a chance to take that pulse. And I'm glad to comment on that without my answer getting too long. So,
Well, tell you what, let's take a quick commercial break. I want to let folks know that we do have a pair of headphones for Sheila, and if you have a question or a comment for the interim president of the University of Montana, and you're expecting maybe 6-8 months tops?
I think that's about right.
Okay.
It could be a year, but it could be 6 months. It could be a year, and whichever is fine with me.
Okay, lines are open if you have a question or a comment or a suggestion. 721. This is your community. This is your university. We'll be right back. Everything stops when there's a puppy in the room.
I'm melting.
721. Bye. Bye.
My new puppy, Astra, who likes to wake up every 2 hours during the night because her bladder is the size of a peanut.
Mm-hmm.
And
so John was just a little bit bleary-eyed coming into work this
I often
morning.
make fun of people that treat their dogs like children, but I sympathize now.
You're not laughing anymore.
I'm taking it back.
Exactly, exactly. All right. So we're talking with Sheila Stearns, aside from the puppies, and we brought that in just for you.
That set up the day beautifully. She's a beautiful puppy, John.
Yeah, you were just in the middle of kind of explaining.
Yes.
And as the Missoula community, we see this vision of the University of Montana, which is obviously just partially true. We get some voices, the loudest usually, about what things are like. And the vision that we were presented with, at least from the people that we talked to, various professors and stuff, is just that there was this big disagreement in how funds were being spent, and that it seemed like funds were going towards one group, administration, and not towards another group, the professors or the humanities, or however you wanted to frame the story.
Right. Well,
and so I wanted to get your take on all that.
It's certainly the appearance of a disconnect, and one of the parts of my vision that's the more mundane part of it is for us to, we have a group working on data trust and data governance, because there was too much distrust on what we think, and we frankly, we insist be very open. It should be just really obvious, and yet a lot of people have been sort of digging, how much do you spend here in this part of the humanities, and how much do you spend over there? So that's hard.
Not only that, whenever the issue of enrollment comes around, which is a real sore spot for so many people, because MSUs has been soaring and they're running out of room for kids in the dorms, and we had that problem several years ago, and now the world has turned the other way around, and so there was I don't want to say suspicion, but there was question with the press that when numbers are released, are these the real numbers, or is this the preliminary numbers, or are we going to get a surprise later on, or what,
Well, one of the centerpieces...
So when you talk about data, that's what I mean.
Yes, and one of the centerpieces of my State of the University speech was that I'm kind of a round numbers person. I can't have my budget person be round numbers. Believe me, they have to balance to the penny.
Right,
I don't want to scare the legislative auditor out there, but I looked at the projections for this year and for next year, because we're making investments that will result in slow, I think, wise growth of the university, But it'll go down before it goes up, because I needed to explain to the people, all of us, all of you out there, two key facts. One, it looks to me as if, give or take, our enrollment for anywhere from 2 to 4 years, maybe 5, will be about 11,000. And that sounds, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. We have this 15,000 caught in our mind. And at some point, I hope you let me explain that 15,000, because there were some facts built into that were actually quite a success story for the university, but it was meant to fall back down when those people got work after the recession. That gives you the quick piece of that. The other thing that I needed to have people get to understand is that they would be completely empowered, for example, through that workshop, to communicate their questions. Well, what about these numbers? Well, how does this work? And secondly, how do you adjust to really adjust? You cannot have an enterprise with 80 to 85% of your dollars going to personnel. For a really, like hospitals and universities, it is going to be up there. It could be 75% personnel, but if you're over 80, you've got to make changes. And so naturally there are values disagreements about cutting that back. And
so were they picking up their knives at the tables when they got to the values disagreement? I mean,
the workshop part of it, they weren't getting quite to that point yet, but I don't even think it was contentious. They were talking about sort of wholesome, transparent, inclusive processes, and they were also making suggestions for which areas grow in accordance with our values and which areas maybe stabilize in accordance with our mission as a university. Those were the table topics, I believe, and helping to advise what is a terrific strategic planning group that's been working since last summer. So I think we're on a good track, and I think that the people who have been maybe in the media a lot, as disconnected, to use your word, John, are, I hope they're feeling hopeful, because I am very committed to involving everyone who wants a seat at the table, so they're sure they're not on the menu when we make decisions.
So a seat at the table, not on the table necessarily. Mm-hmm. The State of the School speech you gave the other day, it seemed to me that you cast a very conservative estimate for future growth of 11,000 students in the population for the next 3 years.
Yes.
And I was hoping you might be able to just kind of explain that a little bit, because we've been hearing for 4 years about how the next year we're going to have all this new growth. We've got all these programs in place. It's really going to get running. We've just been seeding the engine, and it's going to fire up anytime soon. And so
the first part of that, John's right. We are investing in wise admissions and recruiting strategies that, frankly, are more 21st century perhaps than we had before. But secondly, we and also the waivers and scholarships. Many of the ways, including MSU, have been growing their enrollment is a more generous scholarship waiver policy for students. And we have to think how wisely to either emulate that or, to the extent that we can afford it, do our own process. So that's part of it. But no, I was not over-optimistic, and here's why. I am optimistic long-term, but we have bigger classes graduating. We're going to have over 3,000 students receive degrees this spring, and our incoming class will be about what it was last year, because our processes take time. And so it takes a while, as somebody said, for the rabbit to go through the snake, for larger classes, to work their way through the system.
I love that, rabbit through the snake.
Yeah.
That's a metaphor I'll be using in the future.
And I don't mean to cast the university as a snake. Oh my Lord, I'm going to live to regret that. But what I'm saying is we had a group, and here's part of the large classes that I wanted to brag about. Part of the large classes were people who came back to the university during the recession. They were laid off. And it is a success story that many of those folks, some of them just came for a semester to get a retraining, a certificate or something, and some came for the 4-year degree. Those groups either have gotten their jobs, that's a success story, and they left us, and so enrollment came down.
So basically the University of Montana did its job.
Absolutely. And so the drop of enrollment connected to labor success, job success, to, partial degree. There were other factors.
when we get back to the break, I'm just curious. Do you have statistics? Obviously, you're here without paperwork or a computer, but
You're doing really good, by the way.
on the placement rate, the job placement rate for University of Montana graduates, I'd be interested to hear that.
I have some round numbers I'll share. We're concepts.
Yeah,
on
we're good
that.
to round numbers.
Okay.
Okay.
We're going to come right back. Sheila Stearns joining us, the interim president of the University of Montana. We have her here in studio. You have a question or a comment, she's got her own Real Radio headphones, and she's willing to visit with you. We will be right back. Okay, we're back on Talkback. Sheila Stearns, interim president of the University of Montana, joining us in the studio. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so there's skeptics out there. I know because my dad's one of them about the profitability of a degree that the universities are just giving kids worthless degrees. They graduate, they don't have anywhere to go with them. They end up spending all this money on debt. It actually became kind of a part of the last election cycle, frankly. And I guess I wanted to get from you, what is you see the value of the degree? And maybe you could pair that with talking a little bit about what job placement is like for graduates from the University of Montana.
Okay, John, love to do that. And I'm sure going to have to draw that circle in the air like you and Peter do to each other to cut me off, because I could just
Go for it.
We're actually
this. practicing
for the next Star Wars. We want to be,
We have at least 5 full minutes for you to stretch out and explain.
background Jedi.
Go
here.
for it.
Well, here we go. Even if there weren't tremendous value to an education in and of itself, it leads people to paths to careers often that they never dreamed of. People with higher education are much better positioned to find their way to careers that currently don't exist because of how innovative we are. All kinds of data and proof for that. But secondly, especially with the recession, there's data out of Georgetown University that's incontrovertible that the first people to laid off are those without college degrees, or frankly, who didn't finish high school. And then the next group, that by far the highest unemployment, are those who didn't finish a college degree, any college degree, like me with my English degree. My dad used to say, when my twin brother and I went off to college, well, English, I guess. He was a dentist. He wanted me to major in pharmacy or something really practical. And he said, well, I suppose you can teach. And, of course, I was a teacher, and I loved it, and we need teachers. So he didn't, and I don't diminish that. But my brother was majoring in economics, and he said to a neighbor, I suppose he can open an economics store. But, there are those skeptics.
We're having a sale on economies today.
Yeah, exactly. There are skeptics about the wonderful variety of majors and value. But where you pile up college debt that may be out of proportion to the skills you're building in yourself, frankly, is if you go to a extremely expensive college or university beyond your or your family's or your future career's ability to pay back. You need to make our consumers, and we do a lot of financial literacy for families. You need to make those decisions. Just because you get a couple $1,000s perhaps to go to a very expensive university someplace with a prestigious name doesn't mean you should, because those figures into our national college debt ratios. It's not here in Montana. Our data for Montana, give or take, most people graduate, if they graduate with debt at all, with around $25,000. Now that's a lot. I am the first to admit that. But you know what? Think about when you buy a car. Think about the debt that you assume. You have time, and your payoff is not that long. It might be to your late 20s or early 30s, depending on the career you select.
And you don't have to trade in your college degree for a new model.
Exactly. It ideally, one of our outcomes is we have motivated and empowered you to keep learning and changing.
Oh, Peter, you don't know about continuing education credits. Everybody's got them these days, and you got to keep getting them. You'll be paying out for a while.
Well, the value of a college degree, as I say, is indisputable, and it is due to wise choices if you accumulate too much debt. We in the university system have had a tuition freeze for 8 years. And Montana is still one of the best buys. We can't maintain that forever because the Montana legislature and others have pressure, understandable, on so many other needs in the state that they, more of the burden in the last generation or two has shifted to tuition. But we've done a pretty good job of making it more economical. But I will get into any conversation over coffee with anyone about the value of the college degree.
Now, part of that factor that you just mentioned was the ability of the degree to pay you back over time. what is the job placement rate for graduates from the University of Montana? Are most of them getting work, or are they kind of swimming around in this post-recession era?
In mom and dad's basement.
Yeah. The latest figure I've heard, and again, this is a round number, is that 80 to 85, and in some fields 90% of our graduates have a job, even related to their field, within a year of commencement. Wow. And partly that's because of our much more robust, which I helped invest in and lead as Commissioner of Higher Education, in our 2-year sector. But really, all of our graduates, even right up to and through our PhDs, have a surprisingly higher rate of finding a major related position within a year.
When you say the 2-year sector, are we talking about the Missoula College?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm talking about, because some of them call themselves community colleges, some just plain Missoula College, some, even our tribal colleges.
They used to call it VOTEC.
Yes, and we don't anymore. Because I'll tell you one of the reasons we got away from that, and it didn't mean to be euphemism, because it implied that you only went to those colleges if you wanted a vocational or technical degree. They are still really strong in vocational and technical occupational degrees. But you can get the transfer to make it very, very economical to then transfer and get your 3rd and 4th years at, frankly, almost no debt.
My family has this story. We were struggling. It was the recession. I was in real estate. Really dumb move. But during that time, my wife was looking for other ways to make money, and she took at the Missoula College CNA class to become
Let the record reflect I'm pumping my arms.
And she went from the CNA. She was really good at it. She became an RN. She teaches courses at the university. Now she's on her way to becoming a nurse practitioner.
Stories like that all over the state, John.
I don't know if we'll ever stop spending money on school, but I can tell you that that it kind of started with that CNA degree. Just getting that, you could taste a little
certified
sample
nurse assistant
of what the job might be like, and then go for it.
And could I just sort of pat myself on the back here for a minute to say, one of the things we did while I was commissioner was to make sure that what you could do as a CNA, the courses you took, would fairly easily then transfer when you were ready into getting the 2-year nurse degree, and that would then fairly easily transfer when you were ready to the 4-year nursing degree. All of that had to work together, and this was a success story for us here in Missoula, and for the state.
Well, let me tell you, with my son, who went to the 2-year rad tech degree at Missoula College, when he initially started
radiologic technology,
there was some problem transferring to the main school, and whoever was in charge of clearing those away, God bless you all, because it was. I don't know how many times I called the dean at the Missoula College and said, "What's going on here? The credits from this course, which is exactly the same as the course over here,
right,
they won't transfer. What is the deal? Is there a turf war going on, or
you know
what?"
Peter, it's no longer. It's not perfect, but it is so much better than it was in terms of that transferability. And I give a lot of credit to the Board of Regents who said, "It shall be done."
So let it be written.
They're the boss.
Yeah.
And so we'll come back to that, but it happened.
Okay, we're going to come right back. Having a great conversation with Interim President of the University of Montana, Sheila Stearns. All 4 lines are open. This is a talk show. If you'd like to talk with Sheila, lines are open. She's only going to be here for about another 15 minutes or so. So give us a call, 721-1290. Hey, we're back. This is Talkback. 721-1290 is the number. John King over there. I'm Peter Christian. Joining us is Sheila Stearns. She's the interim president of the University of Montana. Got to shift gears just a little bit now, Sheila. In my role as the public address announcer at the football games, which I'm coming up on
which I love, and you do a great job.
On my 20th year, if you can believe this.
Oh.
People think that I have a much deeper and more profound role than I do, that every other Saturday getting up there and yelling "First Down Montana," which is kind of what I do. They think I have this insider track on what's going on with academics and athletics.
I was hoping you did. I was going to ask you some questions.
I don't know nothing. But
you get your own round table.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Some of the criticism I get is, we need to spend more of the enthusiasm that we have about athletics and transfer to academics somehow. So if you could share with me how those two worlds coexist together, the athletics and the academics.
It's no secret to anybody in America that our higher education system developed differently from other countries, Europe and Asia. On the other hand, American colleges and universities are considered to be among the finest in the world. That's primarily probably for their graduate programs, but really across the board. So what's wrong with that picture? What's interesting about the picture is, you remember a couple years ago, or more than that, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the famous Grizzly Bobcat game.
Right.
It is part of our DNA. I'm, for good or for ill, that I was born with some of the genes that I had that I'd gladly trade, but it is part of our heritage and history that we are interwoven with intercollegiate athletics. Our governing board many decades ago made the decision that we, for example, at the University of Montana would be an NCAA Division I university, not football FBS, level, but that we would compete, and so would MSU, creditably, and with excellence that they expect of universities in all of their areas, academics as well, and so that it's our job as presidents to ensure, and faculties. We have faculty athletic representatives and faculty advisory committees to ensure that excellence is interwoven into the fabric of the university. Sometimes we do it well, sometimes not so well. But it is always the goal, and I think at Montana we do it pretty well. There are some faculty who will, and staff who have no interest in Grizzly athletics. That's fine. And there are some student athletes who have no interest perhaps in attending, and just some random lecture. That's fine too, provided that they are being good students.
Sure.
And you and I talked about the expectation that those students have as high or higher a grade point average in aggregate as other students in the whole student body, and we do. For the 23rd semester in a row, our student athletes have had a grade point average last semester higher than the rest of the student body. Yeah. So we are integrating our student athletes completely. They're not living in separate halls, they're not off in separate, little
right.
enclaves. They are part and parcel of who we are. And it's a good thing. It's part of American higher education, and I think it works.
If I may put it this way, they're part of the family.
Exactly,
right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, they make us proud. Athletics are the front door of the university, for good or ill. Sometimes that's good, sometimes bad. And the reason the front porch may not be the fanciest or always the best room of your house or the room where you spend the most time, but it's important, and one of the reasons is you guys. Mm-hmm. Media across the country have a very understandable, natural fascination with, sports, with human activity, human competition. And it's just so much more obvious in the athletic arena than it is in the academic arena. So that is why it gets a lot of attention, and I don't consider it contrary to the values of the university, provided that the president and faculty are in control.
Sure.
We have just a few more minutes left with you. I wanted to talk to you just briefly about big events coming up this week. Obviously, you gave the State of the School address. The State of the State address is today. The legislature is ongoing. How does the University of Montana fit into the spectrum that we have in here in Montana with politics? I know that there's got to be some representation from the school at the legislature, some desires from the school, from the legislature. Can you kind of explain a little bit about what we're hoping for out of this session?
John, I will tell you, when I was first a vice president of the university many years ago, there was a vote about whether to have annual sessions, early 80s, or adjust the Constitution to annual or biannual. And President Bucklew was telling a group of alumni that he was just new to the state, so he voted for annual sessions. That made good business sense to him. And he said, after I lived through, the effort to get support, I realized biennial sessions was a pretty good thing. And he said, there are those who think that the legislature should meet, 2 days every 90 years and not 90 days every 2 years. And the only reason I make that little joke, because I don't believe it at all. We are represented there. Our director of communications, Paula Short, is working there. It's because it creates a time of uncertainty in universities. Uncertainty about our funding, uncertainty about tuition. But other than that, we are nonpartisan. We support any legislator and, in fact, applaud them for their public service. every single legislator is trying to do the best they can.
Strap on those headphones because we've got a couple of calls.
Okay.
Naturally, they call right just about her. She's about to
Yeah,
go.
thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah. So Pete, you're on with Sheila Stearns. Go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I really appreciate her stepping up to help the university. Couldn't find a better person. Just two comments. One, I have some grandchildren are going to the U, and yesterday was their first day of class, and one of those grandchildren went to the first two classes, and the instructor didn't show up in either one of them. And the teaching assistant finally showed up in one and took the role. And so I thought that was kind of disturbing.
Yikes.
The first day. Second of all, I've had a chance in the past when I was a supervisor to be hiring people from the Butte campus of the university. And I was candidly impressed with the candidates we interviewed. They often came with their advisors who interviewed us more than we interviewed them, and helped negotiate salary ranges and benefits. And when those meetings got over, I felt like I was applying.
That is nice to hear.
And I was really impressed with that, as well as the internship programs they have in place.
Peter, thank you. Pete,
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm learning how to operate this. Pete, thanks for letting me know. I'll tell you where I was at 9 o'clock yesterday morning, the first day of class. I looked through, and with no warning to the professor, I found a class, a chemistry class, with a couple hundred students, and I went. The professor did not know I was coming, and I spoke to the students ahead of time and then talked to them about, and they could not, the people in the front row that I got to visit with, could not have been more complimentary about their experience fall semester, learning about apps like Quizlet and other things to help them. So I can't wait, Pete, for you to call these guys back, you know their number, and tell me, have your grandchildren, tell me the names. Tell me the names of anyone who was not there yesterday morning.
Okay.
I was there, and it makes me mad to learn that anyone didn't show up. It's just shocking.
Well, we'll have to have you back on to explain the Krebs cycle to everybody since you're in chemistry classes too.
Yes,
all right. So
that's where oxygen spins off with the hydrogen. I remember these.
Well, that sounds perfectly illicit to me. All right, let's get Ted on the line. Ted,
okay.
We don't talk about those things here. Ted, you're on with Sheila Stearns. Go ahead.
Yeah, I keep hearing everyone's scientific evaluation of why the numbers are down at the university, but to me it's very clear why you guys are failing. And your own liberal agenda has created a monster, and you've shot yourself in the foot. You've cowered and catered only to the gays or the lesbians, the feminist or the foreigner,
Okay.
the hippies or the global warming people,
all right.
Yet you've forgotten where the market lies with the conservative Christian.
Okay.
And all those other people want college for free. They're Bernie Sanders supporters. But if you're a Christian and a conservative, typically a Trump supporter, you go to Bozeman where you're welcome. Because you're not welcome in Missoula.
Okay, Ted. So, you want to respond to that?
Well, thank you, Ted, for calling. It has to take some courage to do that. But I do not accept the premise that we're failing or that we cater only to small groups. We have a big tent at the University of Montana in Missoula, as they do at the Montana State University campus. I know them both very well as our smaller colleges around the state. All of us cater respectfully, and I, frankly, as president, insist on respectful interaction with students of all political beliefs, and for the most part, those sort of political or religious facts about us shouldn't even enter, and for the most part do not enter into the conversation.
Well, one more call, then we need to let you go. Sue, go ahead. You're on with Sheila Stearns. Hi.
Hi, President Stearns. I just have a question about the intercession that we just got through.
Yes.
And I had heard a rumor that it was going to be shortened possibly next year, and my son just went back to school, and he was ready to go back 2 weeks ago, and so I just wondered about that.
Okay. Thanks, Sue.
Sue, I think that is a wonderful question. It's the first my time back on campus for many years, and I don't think that there's any rumor, but I do know that I personally am asking our planning committees to look at options about that, because I'm hearing from a lot of our students that for those who use it for special travel programs, it's awesome. But for probably majority, it has some downside that we need to look at really seriously. So I agree with you, Sue, and we're looking at it very closely.
Right. We have taken up all the time we can with you, Sheila. Thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
But
You're both.
You ended up with headphone hair anyway, so.
It's okay. My hair recovers easily. I can't thank you enough for having me on, and I'm willing to come back whenever we can fit it in. I welcome the questions, including Ted's. I know
Sure.
he speaks for a lot of people, and it's a belief I'm sorry is out there, and I would contest it to the end of the earth, but I would shake hands with Ted and respect him for expressing, a different point of view.
Okay.
So appreciate it.
We're going to let you go. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we will be back. We'll have open phones when we come back. And again, thanks so much to Sheila Stearns for being with us. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. And we have our callers back. Is that correct?
Yeah, something happened. Okay. They got bumped or something.
Okay, well, they're there. So I'm assuming they're on the same line?
They're on. Yeah, same lines.
Let's get Elena up first. Elena, good morning. You're on Talkback. Hi.
Hey, good morning. I just want to make an announcement, not an announcement, whatever you want to call it.
Go for it.
But
this is a whatchamacallit from Elena.
Yeah, it's a whatchamacallit, at 10
a
o'clock.
treatise, a missive of some sort. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I may speak now. At 10 o'clock, there's going to be a hearing scheduled for Senate Bill 97. And the bill was introduced by Keith Regier. And the short title of this bill is to prohibit the application of foreign law in state courts. And I think this is really important. You can hear it online, the whole hearing, and you can just go to the legislative website. You can also comment. You can call them and comment, support or non-support for it. I think it's a very important bill. The foreign law that we're speaking about is Sharia law. And this is sneaking into the courts, and I think that's important that this bill should go through and pass.
Okay. Now, is there any sort of is there any sort of sign that it is coming into Montana, or are there signposts you can point to, or is it simply happen in other states and what?
Oh yeah, it's coming in through all over the place where the Muslims come in, where Islam comes in. You just do a search on it. You see, it's really interesting because you can see how it comes in from other places like Michigan, Dearborn, other places. The Muslims are very quiet, and then you do have the non-radical Muslims, and everything is honky-dory until their numbers grow and grow, and then they become very demanding, and this sneaks in. So before that happens, I think we should prepare for it and pass this bill.
Well, I guess my question is, at what point do we abrogate the U.S. Constitution for another form of law?
That's what they're doing.
Okay.
I think it's kind of funny how, not to change the subject, but now we're making a big stink about all the things that Trump is doing. And my goodness, he's violating the Emolument Act of the Constitution. Where are these people? Where were they when Obama was violating the Constitution? We're not doing it anymore, okay? We've got to prepare before it happens.
Okay. Well, thanks, man. Thanks, Elena.
You're welcome. Bye.
Pleasure talking with you. And you can tell she's listening online. So, all right, let's get Marilyn on the line. Marilyn, thank you for holding. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. So Ted's comment I thought was very good, and I was afraid you were going to cut him off. I thought what
I didn't.
I know. I thought what he said was an example of a lot of our views out here, and I thought she used much grace, and I thought she was very kind to respond to it the way she did. And all across the United States, universities don't have conservative professors, and the media is really bad at portraying what is going on the campuses. I mean, they do highlight some of the things that are going on, the evil ideology that's going on the campuses, and yet the conservative groups that are there, there aren't economics professors that are teaching the right thing, and yet these liberals on campuses have the media attention and shut down the timber industry, the mining industry. I mean, we've had this conversation before, and then they wonder why there's not money for the schools. I mean, so the ideology is there, and they don't allow conservative professors, and there's books out there that explain who these professors are that are on the campuses and their reputations and what they're teaching. And so if the university system goes down, it's all right by me, and we better not pass a law that says the childhood education that all the liberals want in this state. I hope that doesn't happen.
That's pre-kindergarten.
Because they've already done a bad job educating our kids and indoctrinating them and brainwashing them. We don't need them to start at 3 years old. Leave the children in the families where hopefully, parents will be responsible and do their job to bring their children, give them a good head start.
Okay.
To use the liberal word.
Yeah, gotcha. All right, Marilyn.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks for the call. All right, 721-1290. We have about 2 minutes left in the show.
Got a couple Facebook comments.
Okay,
this one's from Bill. He says, excellent interview. Thanks. And Jeannie says, someone called in and said that conservatives are not welcome at the University of Montana campus and that conservatives need to go to Bozeman. I'm not sure of the climate on the UM campus at this time. However, remember when Rob Nadelson was teaching law at the UM Law School and the backlash he got from other professors?
Well, there was a reason why he had an office in the basement. As a matter of fact, Rob, I believe at the time he left, had been published, and it's a really big deal for a law professor to be published, okay, had been published more often and cited more often than anybody else in the University of Montana Law School. And, and when he left, let's just say there were no tears shed, okay? And so I always thought that was really sad because he stood up for the Constitution. He stood up for conservative values. He ran for governor, for crying out loud. And so, there may be some truth in that. I guess it all depends on the school and whoever the leadership is, and that sort of thing. So
yeah, and and there's bias that even I have, right, for professors and teachers. 90% chance, usually, especially if you're in a humanities field, you're a liberal.
Yep.
And that goes all over the place. Even by the way, at private Christian universities. I know many of these professors that work at these schools, and a lot of them are liberal. It's almost part of the DNA of American education is to produce teachers of like mind. And that it just... I don't know. I just don't think it's a uniquely University of Montana problem.
For someone who comes from a conservative, especially conservative Christian background, to go to the University of Montana and be able to retain their identity of who they are, it tells me that they're a very strong person because they are not going to receive a whole lot of support, for their own lifestyle choices than they would if they were coming some other way.
That being said, I've been to campus to watch movies. They give the free movies for with my kids. And there's Christian groups out there with their T-shirts on. And
fantastic.
It's not abnormal.
All right. Well, you guys have yourselves a great day, and we will talk to you tomorrow on Talkback, starting at 8:30.